Okay, so both of the things that we are doing today are going to be very, very similar. Okay, so I'll teach you something, you're going to do some homework on that, and then we'll come back and we'll do a second lesson, but it's going to be very similar to the first one. So you're going to find that a lot of this is the same. We're going to work on finding percents today. You're going to need your calculator. Okay, so if you have a handheld calculator, grab that. Those of you at home, if you have a calculator, go ahead and grab that out. If you don't have a calculator, you can use the one on your Chromebook. That's fine. Okay. For me, it's always easier to have a handheld one. It just seems quicker. Okay. We are going to work on finding the percent one number is of another and finding the percent of a number. Okay. So when we do this, there are two methods for this. Okay, this is in your notes. We can either use the percent proportion or the percent equation. And to me, it does not matter which one you use. They both give you the same answer. It's whichever one you like better. Okay. Personally, I will say that I kind of like the proportion, and I'll tell you why. Okay. When we're using the proportion, we have the percent over 100. The percent in the problem is always easy to pick out because it has a percent sign. Okay? And then we have the part and the whole. Now I want you to write something on here. When we're looking for the number that represents part, we always look for the word is. And whole is the word of. So kind of is and of. Okay, and really we plug our numbers into that proportion and then we solve it. And we'll be missing one of the three numbers. The percent equation works really, really well. It's the same type of thing. It's the percent times the whole equals the part. But if we're going to use the percent equation, the percent must be written as a decimal. Write that down. Oh. The percent must be written as a decimal. Okay, for whole, we're still looking for the word of, and part is still the word is. And this will make sense as we do a few examples. Okay, but that percent has to be a decimal. And that's probably the one reason I don't like the equation, because people tend to forget to change the percent to a decimal. Okay, and if we're using the equation, it has to be a decimal. Okay, so let's try this a couple of times. Okay, we're going to see problems like this. What percent of 144 is 64? Okay, now I'm going to show you both. And then from there, you guys can decide which one you like better. Okay, the percent proportion is percent over 100 equals part over whole. Okay, so ultimately we need to fill in those numbers. Okay, so I'm going to draw this again. I know 100 has to go here. Do we know the percent? In this problem, are we given a percent at all? Is there any percent signs? Hang on one second. Hello? Okay. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah, bye. Okay. So since we do not have a percent, we're going to put an X right there. Okay, so it'd be X over 100. Then we're going to read the problem. And remember, for part, I'm looking for the word is, and for whole, I'm looking for the word of. So it says, what percent of 144? That means it's out of the whole amount. So where should the 144 go, on the top or the bottom? Some of you are pointing down. It goes on the bottom. So 144 on the bottom is 64. is goes on the top, so 64 goes on the top. And then we solve it. Do we know how to solve a proportion? Yes, no, maybe. We did a whole unit on this, right? How do we solve this proportion? What do we do? Matthew, go ahead.
100 times 64 and divide that by 144.
Right. You multiply the two numbers on the diagonal, divide by the third number. So 64 times 100 divided by 144, you get 44.4%. Okay? Because it's 44.4 repeating, I'm just going to round it. We're going to round to the nearest tenth. So 44.4%. Okay? Questions on that piece? If we're going to use the equation looks like this. Percent times whole equals part. Okay, and then we're going to fill in our numbers. I don't know the percent, so I put an X there. The whole was 144. The part is 64. Okay, and then we solve the equation. We have to divide by 144. But you get this, x equals 0.444444. Is that the percent? So this is the reason why I'm not always such a big fan of the equation, because now, this is not the percent, that's the decimal. I have to change this decimal into a percent. How do I change a decimal into a percent? Savannah?
You move it 2 places to the right.
Yeah, move your decimal 2 places. So 1, 2. So it'd be 44.4%. Okay? Don't forget a percent sign when you're asking to find a percent. Okay, so ultimately I don't care which way we solve it. Anybody have a preference? Do you like one better than the other? Some of you are pointing this way to the proportion. How many of you think I kind of like the proportion better? It's easier for me to understand. Okay. I don't care which way we do it. Let's try another one. Okay, what percent of 92 is 66? So let's use the proportion. Hannah, if you have the packet that I gave you, you do. Go to page 7 in your packet. Page 7, and it should be there. Okay, so we're going to do percent over 100 part over whole. Hannah, are you looking at your percents packet? Make sure it's the percents packet. It should say percents on the front. Okay, do we know the percent? What percent of 92 is 66? Is there any percents in there? No. So I'm going to put x over 100. What number goes on the top? Which one goes on the bottom? Should I put 92 on the top or the bottom? What do you think, Maya?
On the bottom?
On the bottom, because it says what percent of 92. So 92 goes on the bottom and 66 goes on the top. And now we solve it. Okay. Multiply the two numbers on the diagonal and divide by 92. 66 times 100 divided by 92. Round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So what do you get? What do you get? Anybody got an answer? Go ahead, Sam.
71.7.
Yep, I got 71.7. Make sure and put a percent sign on it. 71.7%. Okay. The next one is just a little different way to write it. Okay, things are just in a different order. It says 64 is what percent of 144? I've actually done this problem already. But I want you to see it written in a different way. Okay, are you guys okay if I stick with the proportion? Can I keep doing it that way? Okay. I don't know the percent. There's no percent sign, so I'm going to put X over 100. The percent always goes over 100 because it's out of 100. Should the 64 go on the top or the bottom? Here it says 64 is. So that goes where? On the top or the bottom? Kason, what do you think? Top. Top, right? Is goes on the top. So 64 on the top. Of 144, of goes on the bottom. And we solve it. And this is really the same problem as we did on the first slide. Multiply the diagonal numbers, divide by the third number. 64 times 100 divided by 144. You should get 44.4%. Questions there so far? Any questions at home? Okay, flip the page. Let's look at a word problem. You're going to see a word problem like this on your homework. 4 friends volunteered to cut the grass around their neighbor's house. Jay cut 23% of the grass. Amy cut 1/5 of the grass. Ken cut 0.31 of the grass, and Bryn cut the rest. What percent did Bryn cut? Okay. What I would do when I see this problem is I know there's 4 people. There's Jay, Amy, Ken, and Bryn. Okay, and let's go through and write down the amounts that each one cut. Jay cut 23%. Amy cut 1/5. Ken was 0.31. And Bryn, we don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out. Any ideas what would be the best way to try to figure out how much Bryn cut? Would it be easier if all the numbers were in the same form? Do we think? What do you think the best form would be? Fraction, decimal, or percent? What might be easier to look at if we wrote them all as fractions, all as decimals, or all as percents? Matthew, what do you think?
Percent.
Probably all as percents. Okay, so Jay has already got a percent. We're good there. 1/5. How do I write 1/5 as a percent? And you can use your calculator. Does anybody remember how to write a fraction? Turn a fraction into a percent? Okay, in case you've forgotten, we're going to do 1 divided by 5, which is 0.2. And then we have to write that as a percent. Move your decimal 2 places. So it's 20%. 1/5 is 20%. Okay, what is Ken's as a percent? 0.31 is what as a percent? What percent is that? Savannah?
31.
31%. Okay, so if Jay is 23%, Amy is 20%, Ken is 31%, the leftover percent is Bryn. All the percents need to add up to what? What would be the total? Matthew?
100.
100%. So let's take 100 and subtract all of those. Minus 23, minus 20, minus 31. Minus 23, minus 20, minus 31. And we get Bryn would be 26%. Okay, and because it says what percent, I can leave my answer like that. I want my answer as a percent with a percent sign. Okay? Questions there? Any questions at home? Okay, let's go to this. Find the percent of a number. So this time it's written different. We're missing a different number. It says, what is 23% of 92? Okay, so I'll show you both. Okay, you can choose which one you like best. The proportion, percent over 100, part over whole. In this problem, do we know the percent? Does the problem tell me the percent? I think so, right? How do I know? How do I know if it tells me a percent, Krista? Yeah, it has a percent sign. It says 23%. So I'm going to put 23 over 100. And then I have to decide where the 92 goes. Should the 92 go on the top or the bottom? Some of you are pointing down, and I would agree because it says of 92, and of goes on the bottom. So 92 goes on the bottom, we're going to put an X on the top. Okay, so to solve this, we multiply the two numbers on the diagonal, 23 times 92, and then divide by 100. And you get X equals 21.16 or 21.2. Should I put a percent sign on that? No. Okay. Do not put a percent sign on that because it just says what number is 23% of 92 and it's 21.16 or 21.2. Okay. If I was going to use the equation is percent times whole equals part. Okay, I can do this, but when I put the percent here, I cannot put the number 23. Because if you're using the equation, the percent has to be written as a decimal. So what would I put in there? How do I write 23% as a decimal? Anybody remember? 23% as a decimal is 0.23. Okay, so we'd have to put 0.23 times the whole, which is 92, equals our part. And when you multiply that, you get 21.16. Again, I don't care which way you use, but you can't forget to write your decimal as a percent, or your percent as a decimal, if you're using the equation. It's kind of why I like the proportion better. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, and we're pretty good at solving proportions. Okay, so I want you to try the next one. Find 117% of 45. You set it up however you want. Oops. I'll go back to that, sorry. 117% of 45. Those of you at home, when you think you've got an answer, type it in the chat. Tyler, you got it. Nice job. Zachary, you're close. Be careful with rounding, and you do not want a percent sign here. What'd you guys get? Cassidy, what'd you get?
52.7.
52.7? Do you agree with her? I agree with her. Okay, because we would put 117 over 100, because that's our percent of 45. The 45 goes on the bottom. Okay, we solve it. 117 times 45 divided by 100. You get x equals 52.65. Okay, do not put a percent sign on this. We're not asking for a percent. We're just finding a number. You can either leave it as this, 52.65, or you could round it to 52.7. Okay, rounding to the nearest 10. Questions there? Okay, last problem is a word problem. On the last math test, you received 87%. There were a total of 46 points on the test. How many did you get correct? Okay, I would still go back to setting up a proportion. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to set up a proportion. Do we know the percent? Absolutely, right? It says 87%. So I'm going to put 87 over 100. Okay, the only other number in this problem is 46. Is that the part or the whole? What do you think? Should that go on the top or the bottom, Savannah?
On the bottom.
She says on the bottom, and it says a total of 46 points. So I would agree. That is the whole amount, 46. And that means we put an X on the top. So to solve this, we're going to multiply 87 times 46 and then divide by 100. And you get 40.02. Would you leave it at 40.02? Think of the question here. It says, how many did you get correct? Did you get 40.02 questions correct? Probably not. You got what? I would say you got 40 questions correct. Logically, in this problem, we would round to the nearest whole number because typically you don't get 0.02 questions correct. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Questions from anybody online?